You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to begin? Look no further. The team at Dodge Media Productions has 20 years of experience as podcast listeners and observing the industry and 8 years experience in podcast production. We can help you take your podcast from idea to fruition, and we'll make the process seamless and easy. We'll help you with everything from recording and editing to hitting the charts on Apple Podcasts. So what are you waiting for? Contact us today and let's get started. DodgeMediaProductions.com.
Welcome, everyone. We have guests today. Dustin and Lisa from The Long Rewind are joining us to talk about the latest Superman film. Does it have a subtitle? Superman colon something?
It was
Maybe
originally
it
Superman Legacy, I think, and then
correct.
he dropped that and just made it Superman.
All right. So I had the joy of seeing it in the theater. I believe Dustin and Lisa did as well.
I did, yeah.
It was a long film. I checked, it was about the same length as the 1978 Christopher Reeve version, and adjusted for current dollars, about the same budget.
Wow. Okay.
And I have to say, I think Donner got more out of his dollar than this one. Short answer for the listener at home, I think Crypto the dog steals the whole film. That was my favorite part. Every scene involving the dog was fun to me. The rest of it, though, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Bog standard superhero film from Hollywood, in my opinion. There were some parts that I thought were funny, but it just felt really, really long. I said I was maybe at about the 86-minute mark, and it felt like there was a natural coming together, and I thought the movie was over. Mm-hmm. And then it went on for another hour. And that's kind of my experience of modern superhero films,
right,
is they just feel really, really long. Mm-hmm. And this one, it didn't feel horribly long, but I just felt like I said, I think there's a whole third of that film that I felt was extraneous. We could have wrapped it up and gone home. So I think Gunn did okay, but it wasn't, for me, as fun as the 78 version, and it wasn't really as I think big and bombastic as some of the other Marvel films. So I'm not sure what role they were going for with this film. I don't have any problem with the lead's portrayal of Superman. I think it was odd that we had so little of Lois Lane. Dustin, though, I think you have a few thoughts maybe about this film. And you're, for full disclosure, you're a much bigger fan of Superman than I am.
Yeah. I think part of what you're saying, too, about it feeling long, or superhero movies in general, or one of the problems I have with them is that they feel like all of them feel collectively like they're meant to be one big movie. Mm-hmm. And so as you enter the film and exit the film 2.5 hours later, you don't feel to me like you've moved anywhere. Because it's every movie picks up where the previous one left off and feels like an advertisement / there's like a to be continued on the end of all of these movies, right? Yeah. Because they're not making movies, they're making cinematic universes. Mm-hmm. And that's very different. And even the early Marvel movies like Iron Man and Captain America the First Avenger, at least those felt like full movies that had 3 acts and told a complete story. Like you wouldn't have to go see the one that came after it. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of talk in the industry about how Marvel has gotten off the track in recent years, and because they have put out too much content, and it felt like you had to hire a tutor before going to the next movie because you didn't watch season 4 part 6 of WandaVision, or whatever, and it was too much mythology, and it felt like work, and the movies felt like work, and the fun got sucked out of them. And obviously with I haven't seen it, but I understand that with the Fantastic Four, which is even called First Steps, I think that's the subtitle of that movie, is that they're trying to restart and get away from that a little bit, make less content on lower budgets, because the other thing that's happening is that these movies while still making like $400 million. That's a loss for Disney, right? Because they cost so much to make and so much to market. So even Superman, for as big a hit as it is, and I think Warner Brothers is pleased with it, is still not going to make money. But they didn't need it to. They just needed it to do well enough that they could make the next 8 or 9 that they've already got planned, because this is the beginning, as has been discussed often among people in the industry and fans. This is the beginning of a new cinematic universe.
Yeah. There's I think a cameo, if I recall correctly, in the latest Superman of John Cena as the Peacemaker.
Yeah.
And that series, at least season 1, I think there will be another season, but that series, to me, was the most fun thing that DC has done in a long, long time. It was kind of over-the-top, ridiculous. It felt very divorced from the rest of the cinematic universe. It was just kind of bonkers, and I thought that was its appeal. I think John Cena is a remarkably appealing muscle-bound guy. Probably couldn't carry a serious film like Superman, but he's perfect in that role. And I think that's, for me, more appealing. I like the funnier. The Ant-Man series in the Marvel Universe, they were more lighthearted. They had some more humor. And I think that appeals more to me. Like you said, I don't want to have to go to the wiki article or a book in the library and do research before I see a film to understand it. I want it to be self-contained and fun. And especially these films, they're summertime blockbusters. They're cotton candy and popcorn kind of films. They shouldn't require study. And I think a lot now there's maybe too many callbacks for the nerds. That and the story maybe depends on it too much.
And it makes you wonder who these movies are made for, right? Are they meant to be all inclusive, like of the comic book nerds that know all this stuff and the casual viewer? Or are they just for the comic book nerds who know all of the ins and outs of all of the mythology? The only series Lisa and I watched, we watched Peacemaker.
We did watch
Peacemaker.
Peacemaker.
It was okay. I think we enjoyed it. The only one we really liked was Hawkeye.
Yeah, from the Marvel universe.
Which was a very small scale by superhero standards. It was essentially like a Christmas story.
Yeah, it was like a...
It was only a few episodes, and it was very contained. Hawkeye was the only one in it, so it didn't feel overstuffed.
I think it was the only Marvel thing I had watched in years, to be honest. Yeah,
I found the last few Marvel movies. What was it? What's the one with Dakota Johnson?
You're asking me.
Madam Web.
Madam Web.
The last Captain America movie with Harrison Ford. I found these things literally unwatchable. I couldn't finish them. They were so bad. That's the state of superhero movies for me. I'm so tired of superhero movies, to be honest. And that's crazy for me to say because I was into superheroes as a kid. And in the 80s, Lisa and I did a whole episode of our podcast on what a desert the 80s was for superhero movies. Like, we were just so hungry that we would see, like, just the worst stuff, I mean, we had Incredible Hulk on TV with Lou Ferrigno.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder Woman.
We had a couple of really bad Captain America movies with Rev Brown, and they're just, and a couple, there were like 2 or 3 Superman movies, and then there was Batman at the end of the decade. But there was really not a lot when we were kids if you were a superhero fan for live action. I mean, these movies, Stan Lee sold Fantastic Four to Roger Corman at one point, right? And that's how little value they, Marvel and DC thought that these properties had.
I remember watching, on purpose, the Spider-Man TV show where he basically had goggles. They couldn't even figure out how to do the eyes on the Spider-Man suit. It didn't matter. I was like, I'll watch it. Well, as a kid, probably formative of superhero content was the Adam West Batman series.
Oh, yeah.
And that was silly. It had puns. It was kind of lighthearted, didn't seem to take itself very serious. And that really appealed to me as a kid. I remember another kid in the neighborhood would make fun of me because every afternoon at like 2 o'clock or whatever, we'd have to stop what we were doing to run in and watch the Adam West Batman show. I enjoyed the sense of fun and playfulness. And I think the cinematic universe is just the very nature of the name universe. They're very pretentious, very large and overblown. You mentioned Hawkeye had a small feel to it. The Superman movie, it rolls back. Now, credit to Gunn. that he just did some title cards at the beginning to catch you up. He skipped a lot of the origin story in that regard, but it still feels epic in scope. That there's things crashing and cities being destroyed and all of this very large, where I think part of the appeal for me to some of the old style characters is that they were small, they were real people. I mean, Spider-Man, for example, the whole point of him was he wasn't your superhero. He was just this kid who had a couple powers and he kind of didn't know what he was doing or had it sorted out. That, I think, was more appealing. In this case, Superman has always had that trouble. How do you find real peril for Superman? So I think they invented kryptonite during, was it the serial, not during the comic run, the radio serial. So you had to come up with some things that were peril for him. In this case, I felt like the Nicholas Hoult character, in some sense, it was too much of a kind of a deus ex machina in that, like, he just walks into the Fortress of Solitude and we don't find out for 2 hours the explanation for how that could happen. But that whole time I'm just like, what's going on here? The whole point of the Fortress of Solitude is it's in the Arctic and you can't get in. It's not a fortress. So I thought Holt did fine, and he had a real scenery-chewing monologue near the end. I thought he did well in that. But I don't know. Did you feel like they had believable peril throughout the film for Superman?
I thought they had lazy peril because they did the thing that sometimes happens in Superman, and you can do this well, as evidenced by Superman 2, where he has to fight 3 other Kryptonians who all have the same power as him. But they just made another Superman. They had him fight another Superman, like a Superman clone, essentially.
Yeah.
And there is there's a bizarre Superman in the comic books, and he's a great villain, and he shows up in the Super Friends cartoon I used to love when I was a kid. And, so it's cool to see that idea, but the way they use him is so lazy and gets to a thing that bothered me about this movie, which is it kind of makes Superman look like an idiot, because we're told in the title card that starts the movie that Superman has just lost his first fight ever. He spends no time in the subsequent movie wondering who the hell is this masked character that managed to beat me?
The first person
Why was he stronger
He's
than
almost
me?
never mentioned. It's true. He almost never comes up.
He seems to have no sort of like interest in figuring that out.
He's like a cipher. Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into it.
Yep.
You might have to surrender the podcast to me for like 4 minutes
go
for a rant. But before I do that, I just want to tell you that with a character this big, with this much history and iconography, that everybody comes to it from a different place. It's like Star Wars. It's like he's a cultural phenomenon, that historically important, but so big that you can't really listen to anyone's opinion about this without understanding where they come from. So I've listened to a couple movie podcasts, and they talked about this movie, but at no point do they kind of tell you
their background,
what Superman was to them before. And I think you have to explain those things in order to understand a person's take on it, because you're going to hear me rip this movie to shreds in this podcast, but it's only because I'm coming from a very specific place. So my specific place is that I was not a comic book kid. I had a couple comic books maybe total as a kid. Was not into comic books really. But I did love superheroes. I loved the Super Friends cartoon that I mentioned, where Superman led the Hall of Justice.
Oh, yeah.
That was big for me. And I loved capital L, loved the Christopher Reeve movies, and loved Christopher Reeve, one of my favorite actors. I think he was so much better than just that character. I think people that only know him as Superman are not doing themselves a favor, but, you should explore his filmography, because he did a lot of interesting, great work. He was a Juilliard-trained actor and a great athlete, a great humanitarian, of course, and we know what happened to him, and revealed the real his character, which is a great man, I think. And those movies meant a lot to me, and part of the reason is that Smallville is small-town rural Kansas. I come from a town of 1,000 people in downstate rural Illinois that looked exactly like Smallville. The reason Superman is who he is because he had the great luck to land in a cornfield in Kansas and be discovered by these two great Midwestern salt-of-the-earth people, Ma and Pa Kent, who James Gunn turns into total hillbilly rubes in Superman, and they raise him as a Midwestern farm boy. And so he has these values, and I think that that character to me too is just a tribute to where I grew up and the people I grew up around. And for me, Superman is the best of us, and he's who we aspire to be. And Gunn gets a little of that, like that he's a nice guy to a fault. That that's a theme in the movie, and I liked that to some degree. It shows the lack of self-awareness, I think, on Superman's part that Christopher Reeve never had.
Correct.
But that's who the sincerity of the character is what I liked. I like Batman. I love how dark and edgy and insane he is. I love the cynicism of Batman, but Superman to me is like the superhero movie that I can cry at, and I just find his character so moving, and especially in 2025 where you know, Americans are at each other's throats and there's so much negativity in the internet and stuff like that, that those movies feel like what the S on his chest stands for, which is hope, right? It's just he's a model of how we could be better people. And some of that is in, to Gunn's credit, some of that is in this movie, not in a way that is smart or interesting, as I'll get to. But Lisa will tell you that I was really looking forward to this movie.
Yes, he was.
I was hearing that everything I heard about it was that it was a return to a sunnier vision of Superman, a more fun, brighter version of Superman after the darkness of the Zack Snyder universe, Snyderverse, they call it, I guess. That I really, 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 really wanted to like it, and I wanted it to be good, and I wanted it to be my new favorite movie. And so as I mock it, not mock it, but as I complain about it, know that I didn't go in
wanting to hate it.
I wasn't comic book guy from The Simpsons with my computer, like looking for reasons to hate it. In fact, the opposite. I was just trying. I felt myself becoming more and more deflated as the 2 hours went on, thinking this is going to be a lot of work for me because I'm going to have to figure out a way to make myself like this.
Yeah, he said this to me almost right after the film.
Which is what I did in Man of Steel, right? Man of Steel was too science fiction-y for me, and it was too dark for me, like it was for so many people. I didn't understand why Superman was kind of a miserable bastard now. But over the years, I've made myself like that movie, so just because I'm so starved for Superman content as a Superman fan. That's how much I love Superman. I just want to see more of him flying around and doing stuff. And I'm sure that'll happen with this movie, too. I'm going to have to find a way to make myself like it. But it's going to be very hard for the reasons that I'm about to tell you. I just think that people complain that like Zack Snyder fundamentally missed the point of the character, right? And I feel in some ways that James Gunn has also, which is a drag. I want to read you a quote from, this is what Christopher Reeve says in Superman. He says, there will be peace when the people of the world want it so badly that their governments will have no choice but to give it to them. I just wish you could all see the earth the way I see it, because when you really look at it, it's just one world. Yeah, that's the character.
That's what you want from Superman. Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective because I was always more of a Batman person.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in rural Kansas. I grew up in the sprawling suburbs of LA, so an urban area. And I think the cynicism and darkness of Batman, especially in the 80s and 90s, appealed to me more than Superman. And I hadn't really thought of that. If you responded to the goodness in Superman, I don't know if this film captured that fully, at least, right? The sense, that optimism, that hope. I don't know. This, in some sense, I feel like was just right out of central casting yet another superhero film. I don't think there's anything specifically Superman about this film.
Yeah, and James Gunn is a talented, funny, very good filmmaker, but his talent is couched in a cynicism and a sarcasm that makes him a very strange choice to adapt this particular character. I love Slither.
Yep.
I like Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, I thought his Suicide Squad was really good, but those are all cynical, sarcastic, snarky movies, and there's a meanness in Superman that I really didn't
The James
like.
Gunn one.
Yeah, and an insincerity that I didn't like. Let me start by pointing out the few good things about it, though, that I like, just to prove to you that I'm not like Nancy negative. I do like that the cinematography was bright, that the movie had a generally optimistic, upbeat, light feeling. I like some of the humor, although, as I said, a lot of the humor I think comes from a real with a nasty edge to it. Things like Lex executes an immigrant, and that scene is played as a joke. You know, that sort of like, that's a very James Gunn thing, but I was just like, this should not be in a Superman movie. I liked that Lex was really nasty and a real villain.
Like a real mustache twirler.
You really hated him. Like he was immensely dislikable. And Gene Hackman he's a good villain, but he's so likable and lovable in the Superman movies, and you don't ever get a sense that he poses a real threat. And this Lex maybe does. He does seem a little Elon Musky for me. Like the portrayal of him as a fratty tech bro, I didn't totally love, but I thought Corn Sweat was fine. I don't think he's given a lot to do as Superman in this movie, unfortunately. I don't like the take, as I'm about to tell you, on Superman, but I think he looks the part. I thought the costume looked great. I thought the score was really great. I love how they layered the John Williams score into the movie. Yeah. But oh man, okay.
That was the pluses.
You ready? Here we
Strap
go.
in.
I'll try and go through these very quick, and then you can tell me what you respond to, or you stop me as I go if you want. This movie is tonally all over the place. Like every 10 minutes, you feel like you're watching a different movie. It is so overstuffed with so many characters. And none of them is developed at all, including Superman. There were times in this movie where I was like, is this a Superman movie? Because he's been off screen for 20 minutes.
Oh gosh, yeah.
What is happening here? Why am I seeing, like, I get it. It's an intro to a new cinematic universe, but that's what it felt like to me. It felt like the first part of the first act of like some 10-hour movie where you're just meeting all the characters. Yeah. But like you don't really, and so many of the characters are played with one note and get nothing to do. Perry White, he chomps a cigar, but that's all you know about him. Jimmy Olsen has a girl that likes him, but that's all you learn about him. Even Lois isn't given really much agency or anything to do that directly affects the plot. She runs around a lot, but she doesn't do anything except post a news story in the whole 2-hour movie, which I'll get to in a moment why that's stupid. Secondly, Clark is an idiot. Clark, the whole first scene of the movie is Lois interviewing him, which, by the way, is annoying because it's the only lengthy interaction you get between Clark and Lois in the movie.
That was
is
a bummer.
them fighting.
Yeah. Big bummer.
Yeah. What's revealed in that scene is that Clark has no sense of who Superman is in the world because she's giving him hell because he's gone and he's stopped this war. He's inserted himself into this political conflict. Essentially, it's the Ukraine and Russia. And he seems to have no reflection on that, and yet he's a successful journalist at essentially the analogous
the New York Times.
Yeah. I don't get it. Also, Clark is cool. Clark is not supposed to be cool. Clark lifts Lois up and they're making out against the wall. He looks good as Clark. He's not a nerd. He's not a nerd.
He's not a mess. Yeah.
Movie. Yeah. So there's less, and because Superman is so neurotic in this movie, there's less difference between Clark and Superman. So why have a Clark at all?
That was so interesting.
The whole romance, again, as I said, between them, I think it's totally lost. You're not going to like this, but I thought there was too much Crypto, and I thought he looked fake as hell. We haven't figured out how to do photorealistic animals in movies yet. There have been semi-decent ones. I thought the bear in The Revenant looked pretty good, but boy, it's just still so hard to, I think,
still uncanny valley.
Yeah. He looked so digital to me. The scene where he's they're in the spaceship and he's in Lois's lap looked like South Park animation to me. It looks so super imposed that I was just like, man, she is interacting with nothing there. I did think he was cute. I like that they made him like a real rascal and behave like a real dog.
Yeah, he did behave like a real dog. I don't know. You guys know better than we do.
I mean,
It's taken after James's dog.
Yeah.
They
Right,
rescued a dog,
yeah.
and the dog ate a laptop and destroyed a couch.
Yeah.
Speaking of the realism, I think modeling it after his own dog made that harder because it was the shaggy fur, right? Famously in The Incredibles, that was the first time they even got some sort of hair right.
Hair
it's
is hard.
very, very hard
hair
to
is
do
very
hair.
hard, yeah.
So smooth coat dog, much easier to
Might have been easier.
But
That's a good point.
point taken.
Which James acknowledged that the original Crypto was more like a retriever or a lab, which would have been more of a short-haired dog, but his rescue dog that he has that he modeled Crypto after in this one is a terrier, so more of a shaggy-haired dog.
So one last bit about Crypto. I think I liked him for the same reason I enjoyed when Hulk grabs Loki and slams him around. It was a delightful comic relief.
Yeah.
In what otherwise was not particularly comical.
Yeah. Well, and this is also, again, that thing where you have to understand who is this. Like, as I said, I'm not a comic book guy. I'm a Christopher Reeve Superman guy. And those movies took Superman and his world and his meaning and everything so much more seriously than this movie. Richard Donner would never have put a dog with a cape in those movies. It would have looked idiotic. So this is a very different Superman. Like a Superman that has a dog in a cape. Like that's the movie going, look, I know this is stupid. I think it's stupid too. And to me, like that's not the Superman I want. I want the sincere Superman that lives at least somewhat in the real world. I didn't like that Superman spent most of the movie getting his butt kicked. I didn't like that the one thing he kept from he kept a couple things I didn't like, but the big thing he kept from the Snyder films, which I hated about the Snyder movies, was the political component. These are escapist entertainment. I don't need a lesson about the Ukraine and Russia in my Superman movie, and all that stuff in the Snyder movie is about like what are the politics of having a character who has this much power, who can like stop wars and can force peace on Earth if he wanted but doesn't, those kind of questions. I don't need those questions asked or answered in my Superman movie. Give me an optimistic Superman movie where he has some foe to deal with, and I just don't need it. And maybe that's an impossible movie to make in 2025. Maybe you can't make an escapist movie that ignores politics. A superhero movie.
I think you could. I think The Punisher is where you go if you want to talk about whether the ends justify the means.
Yeah,
it's a different
or Batman.
Batman.
There are characters that you could totally do that with, and I don't know that this is the character. The other thing he kept from Man of Steel, which I was shocked at, is that a ton of people die in the climax in the city. This rift opens up and swallows half of Metropolis. You have to figure at least a third of the population of the city was killed in that. And that was like, Snyder took so much heat for doing that at the end of Man of Steel that he rewrote the next movie to comment on the fact that Superman let all those people in Metropolis die. And I was like, what is happening? Why are all these people dying? I don't need that either. And then there's, some of this is nitpicking, but, I think Mike is a fan of nitpicking, right? Yeah. So I'm gonna nitpick some of it. Okay, so go with me here. In a world that cries, we've established that this is the real world, right? This is the Ukraine, Russia. This is like 2025 as we're living in it, in this movie. So in a world where everybody cries fake news all the time,
oh my gosh,
we're just supposed to believe in an instant, the whole world believes in an instant, that when Lex releases this recording of Superman's parents saying that Superman's a bad guy, that everybody just turns on Superman.
I had so many questions about that.
And then at the end, when they release that, they post a news story saying, one news story, by the way, which is released to the internet during the end of the world. While a black hole is swallowing the planet, everybody stops to read a news story about a famous millionaire.
Right.
and it says that Lex is actually a bad guy, everybody turns on Lex in that instant. So this is a world apparently where fake news doesn't exist and everybody believes everything the press says. I don't know. That was weird. If you're going to put all this stuff in the movie about immigration and politics and world wars and that sort of thing, then you can't ask me to believe that everybody just believes everything they read all of a sudden. The sideline Lois, I thought the CGI was really chintzy, and it kind of made it feel like there were no stakes in the movie. I think it's so lazy. The other, what do you call it? The other world, or the
alternate universe, the pocket universe, I think is what they called it. Yes. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
If I see another superhero movie with another freaking alternate universe or alternate dimension that people go
rift
into,
in the universe.
Yeah, that was so stupid. And so here's what we got. It was all black, right?
Yeah.
And then there were cells, and then we're told through some of the clumsiest exposition in movie history that there's a proton river that flows at the bottom of it, and something happens, we're not quite sure, but it's bad if you get sucked into it. So of course Superman gets sucked into it while holding a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's being sucked through the proton river toward a black hole, and we're told it's bad if he ends up in the black hole. So we have a pocket universe with a proton river leading to a black hole.
Yeah.
None of it looked good. None of it had any stakes. None of it felt real. And it was just so stupid. It was so stupid. Say what you want about the Richard Donner movies, and maybe you think the effects in this were better. I actually disagree. I think the 78 movie even looks better than this movie.
I agree.
Visual effects wise.
Because I rewatched that recently.
Yeah.
I was stunned in a good way.
How good it looks.
At how good it looks.
Yeah, it
and
looks
there are
great.
some spots where you can say, oh, they're doing miniatures
Right,
here.
yeah.
But for the most part, it looked really good.
It's tactile. It's a world that you understand. When the train trestle falls and he has to lift up the rail to save the train, or when he has to push the school bus back on the bridge, are these action sequences as large scale as a proton river in a pocket universe heading toward a black hole? No, but
you get it.
But
you understand it.
You understand the stakes.
You if I was in this
that.
situation,
Yeah.
I would be terrified. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
They made it into a cartoon, which is fine. As I said before, I think it feels more like a movie, less like a movie, more like a device to introduce a new universe. And some of that to me was most evident in the bad cameos of wedging in characters that you know are going to show up later. None of which was worse than Supergirl. Supergirl's an awesome character that they turned into a drunken party girl who literally stumbles into a scene in a wide shot for about 45 seconds of screen time.
Yeah.
Makes one joke and then stumbles out of the movie. Did you watch the Expendables movies?
I saw one or two of them.
Did you see the one with Chuck Norris?
I don't remember.
Okay, here's why you don't remember. You probably did. So there's a scene in one of those movies, I think it's the second one, where they're in this warehouse and it's Sly and Jason Statham and these guys are fighting. And a door at one end of the warehouse opens. Chuck Norris comes in, walks the length of the warehouse, talks to the guys, and then walks out a door at the other end of the warehouse. It's literally
Deus Ex Chuck.
It's literally a cameo, and he says nothing of value to the plot or anything.
Right.
Yeah. It's probably 30 seconds long. He literally walks into and out of the movie, and that's what the Supergirl cameo felt like to me. It was oh, that's right, we have a Supergirl movie coming out next summer.
Just so you know.
She leans in through a window.
It's she leans in and waves.
Fortress of Solitude and waves at the camera.
It would be funny if she said, "See you next summer."
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. See you next summer, everybody.
Also, she's a drunken party girl.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I didn't like
I found the portrayal of the Kents to be deeply offensive. They turned it into these total rubes, these country bumpkins. I found it actually personally offensive as somebody from the small town
But
Midwest.
don't you think though there is a certain mindset amongst your big city people that does look down on the flyover states?
Of course.
That whole mindset of these people are simpletons because they don't live in Metropolis. I don't agree with it, but I think that didn't surprise me, I guess is what I'm saying.
Although I think, sorry to jump in, but for me, almost every other version of Superman and Ma and Pa Kent I have seen was better than that one.
It's not hard
almost
to do.
everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Look at
even
Glenn
Smallville.
Ford,
I mean,
got Glenn Ford.
Even Snyder got Kevin Costner was great.
Yeah,
and he's one of the best
great
parts
Jonathan
of Man
Kent.
of Steel.
Yeah,
I mean, even John Schneider.
I know. Even the Smallville Ma and Pa Kent I liked better.
Yeah,
because they represent like salt of the earth, just hardworking
and they're white
people.
Superman
they raised Superman.
They raised Superman to be who he is.
Yeah,
they really believe in truth, justice, and the American way.
Exactly.
They have to sell that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
He tries to fix it by having this one very brief scene where Jonathan Kent talks to Clark outside the house, but all he basically says, it's like something you could read off the back of a coffee can or something. It was like, you'll be judged by your actions and not by what you say.
It was pabulum.
It's such pap.
The thing that came to mind for me was Ethan Suplee's turn in My Name is Earl. That was what Pa Kent came across to me.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes against the whole...
And that's comedy, right? That's just light comedy. Yeah, for sure.
Also, speaking of parents, Jor-El is a villain.
I know.
Now.
And
that
Bradley
was
Cooper.
Irritating. I hope he fixes that.
That was irritating.
Movies. I hope that somehow they revealed that the message was that we didn't see all of it or that it was fake or something. Because that twist to have Superman's father be a villain,
I kept waiting.
Was so irritating
for the reveal that Nicholas Holt's Luthor had somehow faked.
I did too, because how easy would that be to fake? It's nobody knows Kryptonians, so you can make them say whatever you want. You know,
add different subtitles.
Of course,
Ta-da.
Easy as pie. You know.
I assume he's coming back in another movie because
Nicholas
you don't cast
Hoult,
that actor to do that unless you're bringing him back.
Presumably,
But man. That was a bummer.
That was horrifying.
It's a core part of the Superman mythology that he sends Superman off to be part of this world and to show them the way
that both
forward.
His sets of parents are
and
adding
to save their lives and not to go off and rule
goodness,
another
and have a harem.
Yeah. And then finally, all that's nitpicking, I guess, to some degree. But my biggest problem with this movie is really that Superman is a stand-up guy. He's about nobility and he's sure of himself.
Yes.
He doesn't lack confidence. And just because you have a character who's confident doesn't mean he's uninteresting. People complain, people always say, oh, Batman is so interesting and Superman's such an uninteresting character because he's a Boy Scout. And that's so untrue. It's especially in 2025 where we have no more Boy Scouts. Superman is, he's an outsider because he's such a decent person. He's pushing back against a dark world. And therein can be some conflict. And Christopher Reeve does it while also making the character seem deeply human and empathetic. And it doesn't mean that you have to make him a wishy-washy, confidence-free, self-doubting,
naive person.
Which is what I felt like this movie made Superman. Why is he so angsty through this movie? And there's no arc. It's not like at the end of the movie he's not those things. And so, I don't know. It just wasn't the Superman I grew up with and that I wanted to see.
So that kind of gets to one of the things that, one of my big problems, well, this is a sub-part of that, but one of my big problems with how they portrayed Lois Lane, I felt like that was an opportunity missed. I think Rachel Brosnahan is a good actress who can do some amazing things, but she was hilarious in Mrs. Maisel, but also could deliver some range there. I think they had an opportunity missed there. But in particular, the big scene, she goes after Clark Kent in a way, in my opinion, that would destroy any relationship they had.
Yeah.
And I understand if you're in a press conference and there's some reporter that's trying to make a name, they don't give a crap about if, Trump or Musk likes them or not at the end of the night, so they go hard after them. They ask these manipulative questions to try to put them in a spot. But if you're in a relationship with this person, that's a scorched earth policy that didn't make any sense at all to me. And you mentioned Batman, which I always as a kid leaned a little bit more toward the Batman side, but I felt like Batman has the challenge morally of, should I do a thing or not? Like, is it reasonable to use violence short of killing people to solve these problems? He's the Dark Knight. Superman is a different perspective, but I think has the same fundamental question. And they brought that up in that conflict with Lois Lane. What is reasonable to do? And we see this in geopolitics. Which side do you pick? One side's being rotten to the other side, but is it thus morally acceptable to go in and slap around one side and not the other? How do you choose who you defend and who you attack? Those are reasonable questions to have. I think an interaction between Lois and Soup/Clark to say, how do you make that choice? What was it about them? The example you gave, to me it was very obvious they were talking about Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
I don't know that Ukraine has a stellar record that we would sign off on everything. They're maybe better than Russia at some level, but there's still challenges. No country is without flaw. No person is without flaw. So Superman, because of the nature of his powers, is in a unique position to make that call. And that, to me, is the interesting part. And you mentioned a humanity. I think Christopher Reeve brings a humanity to that role that we haven't seen in any other performance of Superman, who I think is very challenging to make human because he is super, right? He can fly super fast. He can he's invulnerable. In the trivia for the Donner film, they talk about some nerd did the calculation of when he flies around the Earth and found that he was actually flying at approximately the speed of light. Mm-hmm. That's
Faster
pretty
than the
darn
speed of light.
fast,
Yeah.
right? So what's going to pose challenges to this guy? I think the challenge is the morals. It's the fact that he was raised with these Midwestern values. And people like to say simple like it's a bad thing, but I think of it as a clarity. Superman brings a very clear perspective to doing good that Batman is the nice foil to, because he doesn't have that. It's murky. Mm-hmm. Everything is gray and up for debate. And Superman is kind of the pure tone from the tuning fork. That's his whole point. That's the character. So to me, having his girlfriend attack him for that doesn't make any sense at all. And I don't know how they would have any relationship after that left over.
And part of it is, I think it's kind of an unanswerable question, right? And so it's a bit of a fool's errand to try to examine, because this guy could end war in the world if he wanted to. I mean, this is where Superman 4 famously went wrong, right? Because that was a movie. Christopher Reeve was like a lot of people at that time, very anti-nukes, and it was in the height of the Cold War. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to make a movie about Superman ending the threat of nuclear annihilation. And that movie doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't work for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons it doesn't work is you can't. It's dangerous to try to impose this character on real world issues, which is why I think the most successful Superman stories, which I would say are the first two Superman movies and then the Bryan Singer movie, which so many people hate, look inward instead of outward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Superman 2 is a movie about Superman wanting to be able to be in love like other people. And so he is forced to surrender his powers in order to be with Lois Lane, and then realizes that he has a responsibility to the world. And the ending of that movie, where he takes Lois's memory away from her, that she doesn't remember that he's Superman, she doesn't remember that they fell in love, is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for that character, the sacrifice that Superman makes in order to protect us and lead us as an example of good people. And the Superman Returns, for as much crap as people give that movie, has an incredible heart, because that's a movie where Superman has fathered a child, and while he was gone looking for his home, the premise of that movie, people don't remember, is he goes off to find Krypton to see if it's truly gone, and it's so far away that he's gone for 7 years. By the time he gets back, Lois has married another guy, and he's a nice guy, and he's not like a villainous, foil to Superman. And she's raising this kid. It turns out to be Superman's son, and he can't be with her, and he can't be with his son, and he never could because of his responsibility to the world and who he is. He's Superman. He's not Clark, and so those are real compelling stories with a lot of heart that I find really interesting in a way that I don't find like Superman trying to figure out how to solve the Ukraine crisis to be interesting.
I was just going to say that is what was missing for me from the whole movie. Was, for me, those are the stakes that Superman faces. It's how he can be a human in a world where he's not a human, and he tries so hard to do that, right? And the relationship between him and Lois, and you said something earlier about how, or you kind of alluded to the fact that kind of everyone just like knows he's Superman, that knows Clark Kent is Superman. And that was so weird to me, because that to me was always one of the hugest stakes for Superman, was like keeping his human identity and his Superman self separate. And so that was weird to me. And the lack of character development, the lack of relationship development, the fact that, Lois and Clark are already together and already fighting, and like you don't get to see that. The Superman 2 stuff means a lot to me in that way. That Lois and Clark relationship means a lot to me, so it was weird to see it. I don't know.
Yeah, the only scene you get between them really is them fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah. So to me, I don't know, the quest to be human, I think for me is like Superman's biggest challenge and the biggest stakes for him, and you don't get those stakes really at all.
To Gunn's credit, there are a couple moments where he elegantly works that in. When she is in his bedroom in Smallville and she sees the poster for the punk rock
the Mighty
band,
Crab Joyce.
Clark is such a square that he can never be a punk rock guy, but he liked punk rock even as a kid. We're seeing his childhood bedroom. I thought that was a nice moment that kind of got at that. But yeah, generally that stuff was missing, and part of it, like Mike was saying at the very beginning of this podcast, it just didn't have time for it.
That's what I'm saying. It didn't spend enough time on that for me.
And it just felt like 9 endings, and
This gets to one of my other big nits, I guess. Was it no longer a nit if it's big?
Pick that nit.
Right.
The threats were external, so you get to this problem that I first heard referred to as the Worf effect. On Star Trek The Next Generation, they wanted to establish that Worf was like the toughest physical fighter ever. So in order to make peril, every episode, the bad guy had to beat the crap out of Worf. So they said, if you look at it, Worf's supposed to be the toughest person on the ship, and he loses every fight he's in. And this is kind of the same thing, that in order to make these external perils big, they had to beat the crap out of Superman. But most people going into this know that Superman is pretty super. It's right in the name. They know that he's invulnerable, he can fly, he can shoot lasers out of his eyes, he's got all these powers. So how is he losing every fight? And I think that's because the focus shouldn't be on the external conflict, but the internal conflict. And I think, in some sense, that was maybe better about the Donner films, is we got to see that, like you were mentioning, the difference between Clark and Superman, and as well as just that inner conflict of Superman. Should I do this? Not can I do this? We can establish he can do these. He could fly around and punch out every nuclear warhead on the planet. There might be some fallout radiation damage, but then we're not going to...
Or you could throw them into space, right?
Yeah, right. Send them into the sun, all these things. But should you, right, in this Ukraine-Russia conflict in this film, I think there was some opportunity for that. The fight with Lois and Clark could have been rewritten differently to have this be a serious conversation between two people in a relationship where one is asking the other, should you do this thing that you're going to do or that you did? What about the other perspective? Is there another way? I think people in all relationships, romantic and otherwise, do have those conversations. Well, I'm not sure that what you're proposing is the best idea. Have you thought of these other things? And you go back and forth. That, to me, would be interesting, although, to Gunn's credit, that's probably not a superhero summertime tentpole movie to have two characters sitting in her apartment having an honest intellectual discussion about the impacts of meddling in other countries, right? That maybe is a different film.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's where Superman can go astray, is when you try to make these external threats, they have to get very, very big and keep getting bigger. And to a certain point, that makes it less grounded, because we don't really know how to wrap our brains around Galactus, Eater of Worlds, or what have you. That's just, it's so big, it's not there. And watching Metropolis get sucked into this thing, that's like cool, I guess, visual effects, but it doesn't feel perilous like a bus of school children falling off a bridge would.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I don't know if they've done studies about this, but I hear this talked about a lot. Like, most of us have a hard time, reading the news, right? You kind of can't even feel the big stuff. It's the little stories. It's the little perils you can feel. It's not the big ones. You kind of just tune those out. It's too hard. And I think that's true in the movies too. You understand, the bus of school children he's got to hold up so that they don't fall into a chasm or something, but the big rift that everyone's falling into or whatever, it's harder. So yeah, I think that's true. I found this movie also very packed full of stuff, just visually. Like, I kind of felt assaulted by the end of the film, just visually, and my senses were just a little too overwhelmed. It might have just been the day I was having, but that tends to happen to me a lot too. I'm a bit of an old lady when it comes to movies like this. Although I should say, you guys talked about F1 in one of your podcasts. I actually came out of that not feeling assaulted, which is, when I came out of Superman, I'm like, why do I feel so drained? And I didn't feel that way coming out of F1. So I don't know, that was an interesting dichotomy to me.
That is interesting, because F1 was very much
it was
an
very
immersive
loud
film.
and immersive. I mean, there was a lot of, so I don't know why. Again, it could have been other things, like the day I was having or whatever.
It was focused. Right?
But it was focused,
And you understood the story. You understood what was at stake for the young character and the Brad Pitt character, and it wasn't it wasn't all over the place. This movie, Superman, just felt like somebody throwing random stuff at the wall and
Well, for an example, that the other sort of Lois and Clark scene you get, I think it's in his apartment, although that was never totally clear, where you're seeing him sit in the chair and you can see there's another big glowing beast outside that what are they called? The Nathan Fillion people, the Mr. Terrific people,
Gang.
the Justice Gang, right?
Yeah.
Which you never heard the end of. They're out. You're having to battle to watch Lois and Clark, because there's this fancy battle happening out the window that Superman's oh, whatever, that's just happening.
Yeah.
It was
that scene, by the way.
I know.
Was
you didn't like that
illustrative of just how kind of this movie was peddling something but not living it.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
we're told at the beginning that Superman will do anything to save a squirrel. Right? There's a scene where
we see a moment where he saves a squirrel.
And we also get, this big monster that's destroying Metropolis, this sort of Godzilla-like thing.
And he wants
Superman
to preserve it.
Wants to take it and put it in a zoo or an intergalactic prison or something. He doesn't want to kill it. That's his problem. The Justice League is trying to kill this gang. Justice Gang is trying to kill this thing. And then, 2 scenes later, the scene Lisa's talking about, he's sitting in the... She's like, should you go deal with this? And he's like, oh, they got it. While they're out there beating the Jesus out of this creature.
Who knows what?
So now he doesn't care.
Right.
He only cares when it's convenient for him to
So
care.
not only was it narratively uneven, but then my brain is what? There's too much.
It's inconsistent.
Yeah. And there's just too much happening for my brain. I just was this is enough.
I guess at the end of the day, and I make this complaint all the time about a lot of movies, Lisa will attest to this, it just didn't feel sincere. It didn't.
Right.
It wasn't, and I felt like the Donner movies, I mean, they were made to make money. They were big epic movies, but I believe that Donner really cared about the character. They tried to tell a human story about a character who wasn't human. They were just very sweet, lovely, but exciting and thrilling.
There were moments of peril and excitement.
Sincere movies. And this just felt like a big piece of candy. And there's nothing wrong with candy, but as I said at the beginning, that's not what I want from my Superman, because the character means a lot to me. So my overall takeaway from this movie was just that I left feeling kind of bummed out, which is a drag. But
as I mentioned earlier, I think it was too long by quite a bit. And even if it had stopped when maybe it should have, to me, it didn't have anything that set it apart from any other superhero movie. It was another superhero movie.
yeah,
Okay, that's fine. One of the things I liked about the first Ant-Man was it was a comedy. It was something different. I enjoy a different take. And you had mentioned at one point something about like setting up things, and I wonder if the prevalence of these streaming series has affected this, because it used to be you have short film and feature film, but now you get these 10 episode series on streaming where each episode is an hour or an hour and 10. That's 10 hours of content. That used to be like Roots, a mini series. It was a giant event that happened once every 5 or 10 years. And now that's very common, especially in like the Marvel universe. Does that affect this at all? Do the storytellers feel pressure to, like you said, they're not really making a standalone feature. It's just another brick in this
It's
wall.
episodic, but they make us wait 2 to 3 years between each episode.
Right.
Yeah. And kind of coming back to something you said also about F1, I felt like F1 was made by people who loved motor racing.
yeah.
And to me, that came through.
Yeah.
They loved it. And they believed it. Superman did not feel like it was made by someone who loved Superman. It felt like somebody who was building a cinematic universe.
Well, and more specifically, it was Warner Brothers going, why don't the DC movies make as much money or
It's the
get the
Marvel
critical acclaim that Marvel movies do? I know. Let's hire the guy who made some of the most successful Marvel movies and put him in charge of rebooting our DC universe to look exactly like theirs, which is what he did. This Superman looked like
Business
the
decision.
Marvel movies to me, and it had all the problems that Marvel movies have. Overstuffed, too many characters, no narrative. So we're these movies, the DC movies going forward may make more money, but all he's really done is he's pulled it in line with what people think of as successful superhero movies, i.e. the Marvel universe. And say what you will about Zack Snyder, and some people love him, and most people I think really hate what he did with those movies, and I certainly had my problems with them. But he had a vision that was very different from what Marvel was doing. I mean, it was dark and sad, which is not where I want my Superman. But it.
Probably
he was trying to put some personality into it, and I don't see that in this movie. Beyond the James Gunn snark, which is his imprint and was very much present.
Probably the exact opposite of these giant tentpole movies is a film I really quite like called Mr. Holmes, about a 90-year-old Sherlock Holmes, and it's incredibly slow. I really like the movie, but it takes a long time to build up to the big reveal at the end. And I almost wish somebody would do something that much of a departure. Okay, we're going to have Batman's 90 and he's in a nursing home and his last thing, something so incredibly different. You had mentioned these different things. Almost to me, my approach would be maybe you have a movie that really is just Clark and Lois over dinner talking about things. Right? Just
My Dinner with Lois.
My Dinner with
Very
Lois.
experimental.
Something incredibly different. What is
a little of that,
different
right?
take?
Like Matt Reeves, his Batman with Robert Pattinson was, a very traditional. Like it went back to the detective comics. It was Batman as a detective, basically solving a crime. And Zack Snyder tried to do that too. I actually loved Zack Snyder's version of Batman. I thought Ben Affleck was a great Batman.
I like that.
And I love the idea. He was like old.
He was an aging Batman, like you were saying.
Yeah, he was very
Which
he was like, I'm over this. My body hurts. I'm too old to be doing this anymore.
Right.
And that was a very interesting take on that character too. So I don't know. I think I would have liked this movie actually if I just cared less, because a lot of the movies that people have gotten bees in their bonnets about, like The Force Awakens or even some of these other superhero movies. Like people will complain about them, and I'll be like, well, I don't know, they were fine. It was what it was. I had a good time.
Right.
And I think this is my turn to be those guys because this character means a lot to me. So I should say that I think the tomato meter is positive, very positive for both the audience and the critics.
Yeah.
So
people like it.
People should go see it.
Well, full
and enjoy it
disclosure,
if they enjoy it.
I went to see it with my two sons, and they both got misty-eyed at different points during the film. Were very moved by it.
That's
and
good.
I was a little bit like you are with other super films. Like, it's all right.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong, really.
Yeah.
I wasn't offended by
I think the less you
anything.
care about superheroes and Superman, the more you're probably going to enjoy it.
Well, they both know all of the canon, and one of the things I think Gunn brought to this that from Marvel is all the inside jokes, or the little thing in the background. Oh, did you see that was blah 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 from this series near the fire hydrant? I miss a lot of that because I'm not steeped in that lore. I approach it more as a film. I'm aware of the characters, but I don't have a deep connection to Superman. I don't know the backstory of all these different characters. I have to say some of the casting, I like Nathan Fillion, but I felt like he played Nathan Fillion in this film. I didn't really get something different. I enjoy him. I liked having him there. Alan Tudyk as the robot. I couldn't help but think this was just Wash from Firefly in a robot body. There wasn't a lot that I could latch onto as a person who was kind of, I guess, not objective, but I was distanced. I wasn't tied into it personally. So it was a fine film. One of the things when I do my ratings, I have a point where I give them more stars if I would watch it again. And this is a not watch it again film. I'm happy I saw it, but I don't imagine I will ever seek it out to rewatch this film. It was fine. I enjoyed rewatching the Donner Superman. Right? That was fun. Even though a lot of it I didn't remember. I'm like, really? Huh? I guess when I was younger, I didn't pay close attention to things like I do as an adult. But I enjoyed rewatching that film. And one of the things I did, we talked about it a little bit before, I was stunned at how good it looked. For being almost 50 years old, that is a really good-looking film.
Yeah. One of my favorite shots in all of film, probably top 3, is in that movie where Jonathan Kent has passed away and Clark is realizing that he has to leave the farm, and he's woken up early and he's out on the edge of the wheat field, and Martha Kent sees him out there and she walks out to him. You can see the trail she's made through the wheat, and it's just her standing with him, and he's like, I'm leaving. She says, where are you going? He says, I don't know, I'm going north. And then the camera just kind of sweeps around them and goes through the wheat and then comes up and over them. It's one of the most amazing camera movements I've ever seen, and the John Williams score swells. Like, that scene just reduces me to tears every time I see it.
That's amazing because that resonated with me when I saw that. I was like, how did they get that shot?
Yeah.
There were no drones in 1978.
No, I know. It's got to be a crane, but it's one of the most beautiful crane moves ever.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
But backing up a little bit, when his father dies, they shot that as this really far wide.
Yeah.
Again, they must have had a crane and they had some 18 lens on there or something. It was so wide, and the choice from Donner to show him collapsing, and you get that big sweeping with the barn and the house, and Clark runs out of the barn, but they're tiny. It was like, that was such a, I shouldn't say fun because when a character died, but I really enjoyed that sequence in that film.
Yeah, he's really underrated as a director because he worked in so many different genres. I think if he had made nothing but one kind of movie, we would remember him as he'd be like John Carpenter, right? He'd be one of the all-time greats, but because but the guy made one of the greatest horror films, he made one of the greatest children's films, he made the greatest superhero movie, he made The Omen.
Oh, The Omen, that's right.
He made The Omen, but then he also made The Goonies.
Oh, right.
He made Superman. He made Lethal Weapon, one of the greatest action movies.
Oh,
he made one of my favorite fantasy movies, Lady Hawk.
Oh, gosh, lovely.
The guy was just an incredible journeyman filmmaker who, no matter what genre he was working in, really excelled.
A lot of touchstone movies, almost gold standard stuff. Yeah.
never forget, Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.